1.6, exercise 15 through 28. These exercises have to do with finding compositions of functions. For each pair of functions, find f of g of x, g of f of x, and f of g of 6. And we're given, in this case, problem 15, the problems for f of x, 2x minus 3, g of x, 4x minus 8. By the way, we're going to go over all these odd number problems, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, and 27. So f of g of x, now you notice I wrote this in parentheses and not brackets as in the original problem. I think parentheses are more conventional. So writing the f function, we have 2 times x, and for x I'm leaving a blank space, minus 3, and then I'm going to place the g right here. And putting g right there, we have 4x minus 8. And now, using the distributive property, we have f of g of x is equal to 2 times 4x, which is 8x, and 2 times negative 8, which is minus 16, and then minus 3. And so f of g of x, simplifying, is going to be 8x minus 16 minus another 3 is 19. So f of g of x equals 8x minus 19. Next, we're going to do g of f of x, and g of f of x is going to be equal to, we're going to write out the g of function, which is 4, leave blank space here, x of x minus 8, and we're going to take this 2x minus 3 and plug this 2x minus 3 in the place of the x in the g of x function. And so we put in 2x minus 3, and distributing, we have g of f of x is equal to 4 times 2x is 8x, 4 times negative 3 is minus 12, and minus 8. And finally, simplifying, we have g of f of x is equal to 8x minus 20. And for this little exercise here, one of the things we want to get out of it is that f of g of x is usually not going to be the same as g of f of x. So that's just one thing to be gained from this here. Next, we have the last part, which is f of g of 6. So coming to writing f of g of 6, we have 8 times 6 minus 19. Well, 8 times 6 is 48. Bring over the 19, and so f of g of x of 6, excuse me, f of g of 6 is equal to 29. There we go. Next on our problem 17, we have our f function is 8 minus x squared. Our g function is g of x is x squared plus x plus 1. So write down g of f of g of x, equals 8 minus, I'm going to leave this huge blank space to put in our g of x function. We have our g of x function is this one right here. x squared plus x plus 1. And to work this out, we have 8 minus, and what we're going to do is this x squared plus x plus 1, I'm going to go ahead and put this in a big box here. And we're going to make this a 3 by 3 box because we have a cubic trinomial times cubic trinomial. So we have x squared plus x plus 1. On the side we have x squared, x, and 1. And x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 1 is x squared. And the next row here we have x times x squared, which is x cubed. We have x times x, which is x squared. Then we have 1 times x, which is x. In the last row we have 1 times x squared, which is x squared. 1 times x, which is x. 1 times 1, which is 1. And I'm going to go ahead and circle the like terms. We have x cubed plus x cubed. We have x squared plus x squared plus x squared. And finally we have x plus x. So writing all this out, we get x to the 4th. We have 2x cubed. We have plus 3x squared. And finally we have plus 1. And working this all out, we're going to have negative x to the 4th, and we're going to have minus 2x cubed. We're going to have minus 3x squared. We're going to have something I forgot here, which was 2x plus 1. Okay, I fixed that. Minus 2x, and then we have 8 minus 1, which is plus 7. So here is f of g of x, all worked out. Now, I'm going to erase this to give more room. Now, on your piece of paper, you don't have a lot of room. You're going to need to find some extra room, extra paper. We're going to have g of f of x is equal to, I'm going to leave a space for x squared plus, leave another space for x, and then the last one plus 1. And so we're going to take this 8 minus x squared and place 8 minus x squared here, and also over here. So what we're going to have is g of f of x is equal to, in the place of the x, we're going to put 8 minus x squared, and we square that, plus we put, make sure it's legible enough, squared, plus we have 8 minus x squared here, plus 1. And working all this squared business, I'm going to leave myself a little room below to the right to work out this 8 minus x squared squared. So we have 8 minus x squared, 8 minus x squared, and 8 times 8 is 64, 8 times negative x squared is going to be negative 8x squared. Lower left, 8 times negative x squared is negative 8x squared. And then negative x squared times negative x squared is going to be plus x to the fourth. And so just writing this out here, g of, well, we have like terms here. This negative 8x squared, negative 8x squared. Circle those. Okay. G of f of x is equal to this. I'm going to put x to the fourth, and we have minus 8x squared minus 8x squared, so this would be minus 16x squared, and then we're going to have plus 64, and bringing what we have on top, we're going to have plus 8 minus x squared, and finally plus 1. And now simplifying, we have g of f of x is equal to x to the fourth, and we have minus 16x squared minus another x squared, so we have minus 17x squared. And we're going to have the numbers together. 64 plus 8 plus 1 will be plus 73. So that's going to be our g of f of x. So these are a little quite tedious. Let me go ahead and do this. Find f of g of 6. Right, f of g of 6 is equal to negative 6 to the fourth power minus 2, 6 to the third power minus 3, 6 squared minus 2 times 6 plus 7. And for this, I'm just going to go to my calculator and plug it in using the function up on top. It just will probably make it easy. So we go to the calculator, and I'm going to put control bars. Oops. That's what I want. Let me clear this out. I'm going to put 6 control bar x. And now we have 6 stored for x, and so we're just going to plug in our f of g of x, and we should get this. We have negative x to the power of 4. We'll have minus 2x to the power of 3. We're going to have minus 3x squared minus 2x, and finally we're going to have plus 7, and for that we get negative 1,841. So I'm just going to write down the answer here. And that's going to be f of g of 6. So that is our answer to that last part of this problem. Okay, next on our problem 19. These really do get to be a bit tedious if you are not able to spend the time to do all these. I understand that. Okay, first thing we're going to do is f of g of x, and that's going to be equal to, put the f function there, 3 minus, and we're going to have x squared. We just make a big parentheses there, leaving room, and we square the outside, and so g will go right in here, which is going to be x cubed plus 1. And so we just have to square this out. F of g of x equals 3 minus, and I'm going to go to the upper right corner like we did in the last problem, and just put in our x cubed plus 1 on the side, x cubed plus 1. And x cubed times x cubed is x to the 6th. 1 times x cubed is x cubed. On the lower left, 1 times x cubed is x cubed, and 1 times 1 is 1. And so we have x cubed and x cubed as like terms. So we're going to put this in place. We're going to have minus x to the 6th plus 2x cubed plus 1. And so just working this out, we have f of g of x is equal to, I'll put negative x to the 6th minus 2x cubed, and then we have 3 minus 1, that's going to be plus 2. So this is what we're going to look like for f of g of x. All right, there we have it. Now I'm going to erase to make some more room on the right. We're going to have, in this case, g of f of x is equal to, in this case, in the place of the g, I'm going to leave a big blank to cube it, and then we have plus 1 left over. In the place of the cube, I'm going to take this 3 minus x squared and place it right here. Okay, and we're going to put in 3 minus x squared. These types of problems can be tedious. Just organize yourself. It'll come out well most of the time. Okay, we're going to have a cube deal here. And so we take 3 minus x squared, 3 minus x squared. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative x squared is negative 3x squared. And 3 times negative x squared is negative 3x squared. And then we have negative x squared times negative x squared is going to be x to the 4th power. And then we take these like terms here, we'll add them together, and we're going to set up another box. In this case, I'm going to go kind of below here. Now this time, on the top, we have, I'm going to put x to the 4th. We have minus 6x squared, and then we have plus 9. On the very left, we'll put 3 minus x squared. So I'm going to put 3 minus x squared. And for that, 3 times x to the 4th is going to be 3x to the 4th. 3 times negative 6x squared is negative 18x squared. 3 times 9 is 27. In the lower row, we have negative x cubed times x to the 4th is going to be negative x to the 6th. Then we have negative x squared times negative 6x squared is going to be positive 6x to the 4th. And then we have negative x squared times 9 is going to be negative 9x squared. And so we have with this like terms, which I'm going to circle together, we have our x to the fourths right here. And we have our x squareds right here. I'm just trying to be careful and put them together. And working all this out, we get g of f of x is equal to, we're going to put everything together here. We have, I'm just going to put them all in parentheses, negative x to the sixth. We have 6 plus 3 is going to be 9 plus 9x to the fourth. And then we have negative 18 and negative 9, so we're going to have minus 27x squared. And then finally we have plus 27. And then we have this 1 left over. And so for this, we're going to get g of f of x is equal to negative x to the sixth minus 9x to the fourth minus 27x squared, and we're going to have, actually the thing that's going to be plus, that's going to be minus there. Okay, yeah, 3x to the fourth, and that's 4. Keeping the sign straight, so that's a big deal here, guys. Okay, minus 27x squared. We have plus 27 plus 1 is going to be plus 28. So that should work out. And the last thing we're going to do is take the f of g of 6. So f of g of 6 is equal to, I'm just going to go, instead of writing it 6 in for everything here, I guess I'll do it. You have 6 to the 6th minus 2 6 cubed plus 2. So I'm going to take the calculator again, and we already have 6 stored x, so we're going to just plug in what we have here. We're going to have negative x to the power of 6. That's going to be a rather large number right there, plus 9x to the fourth minus 27x squared. And finally, we're going to add 28. Or, let's see, I think I've got this wrong here. Yeah, let me get this right. F of g of x is just going to be minus 2x cubed, okay? Minus 2x cubed. Keep these straight. Finally, plus 2. So we get negative 47,086. Let me just write here, f of g of 6 equals negative 47,086. Sure, write this legibly. All right, it should be quite legible now. All right, very, very tedious there. We're going to the next set. In the next set, we have just find f of g. So this is going to lessen the complexity considerably, only having to work with one at a time. In this case, f of g. Well, f of g of x equals 1 over, we're going to leave x plus 1. So I'm going to leave this big blank in the place of x and put plus 1. And the big place of g here, we're going to place x squared minus 4. So what we have now is f of g of x is equal to 1 over x squared, and we're going to have negative 4 plus 1, which is going to be minus 3. So what we need to know is that it's an x squared plus x squared minus 3 cannot equal 0. So if we add 3 to both sides of this inequality, we get x squared cannot equal 3. And so taking the square root of both sides, we have x. I'm just going to write it once again just to be more explicit. So we take the square root of both sides. So x cannot equal, and what's the square root of 3? That's going to be plus or minus square root of 3. So if we summarize our problem here, we say f of g of x equals 1 over x squared minus 3. However, make sure I leave enough room to be legible. However, x cannot be equal to plus or minus 3, so that would be an additional condition. I'm going to box that additional condition in too. Next on our problem, which is 23, we have f of x equals square root of quantity x plus 4, and g of x equals x squared minus 4. So f of g of x equals, I'll put square root of, I'm going to leave a big space here in place of x and put plus 4 over the side. So inside, we're going to place x squared minus 4 in the place of x. So what we're going to get is, simplifying, we'll have square root of x squared minus 4 plus 4. So we're going to get square root of x squared. And square root of x squared is x. And since we can't, you can't have this x squared ever be negative, so we're going to have to take the absolute value, because we can't take the square root of a negative number. So we have to have f of g of x is equal to the absolute value of x. So whatever x is, we got to make it positive, and then we'll go through the paces. So that'll be our answer for 23. 25, we have f of g of x is equal to 5 over x. And in the place of x, we're going to put square root of 6 minus x. I just made a big parentheses here. And so simplifying, we're going to just remove the parentheses. F of g of x is equal to 5 over square root of 6 minus x. And for me, this is good enough. If you want to rationalize this thing, you can multiply the numerator and denominator by square root of 6 minus x and get 5 square root of quantity 6 minus x over 6 minus x. And that's the way the book gives the answer. To me, this one right here is good enough. But we have to know that for conditions that 6 minus x has to be greater than 0. It cannot be 0. Why is that? Because we cannot divide by 0. But 6 minus x is greater than 0. So if we just kind of solve for x, I'm going to leave x on the left side, we have negative x is greater than negative 6. And if we divide by negative 1, both sides, we're going to get x. We have to change the inequality symbol. X is less than 6. So we will say in this situation, for x is less than 6. Okay, last one we're going to look at is problem 27. We have f of x equals square root of quantity x plus 5, and g of x equals x squared plus 4x minus 1. So f of g of x is equal to square root of, and we leave a huge place for x, and we put plus 5. And we're going to take this x squared plus 4x minus 1 and plug this in right here. So x squared plus 4x minus 1. And just adding these together, f of g of x is equal to, we're going to have square root of x squared plus 4x, and we have negative 1 plus 5, which is plus 4. What we have here is a perfect square, meaning that if we have x plus 2, we're going to get x squared and 2x, and 2 times 2 is 4. So taking the square root of this quantity here, we get f of g of x is equal to square root of this quantity here is going to be x plus 2. But we have to know, just like we did in problem 23, that we're going to have an absolute value. Why? Because this quantity down here is never going to be able to be negative. This value here will never be negative, so we have to set that out in advance. So this can be our answer for problem number 27. A bit tedious here, especially those second two problems, but good luck on these problems, on your even number problems, and I thank you for viewing.